Welcome, class. Settle in, grab a seat. Today, we're diving into a fascinating explainer using the business school case method. We're going to decode the incredibly complex world of global outsourcing, and honestly, there is no better masterclass subject than Apple. We're going to break down exactly how one company manages to orchestrate a massive worldwide network just to put a sleek piece of cutting-edge tech right into your hands.
So let's start with a little paradox. Take a second and think about the smartphone sitting right there on your desk. Who actually made it? Well, Apple meticulously designs these products, right? But they don't actually manufacture every component or assemble every single device themselves. Instead, they coordinate thousands, literally thousands, of supplier facilities spread across more than 60 countries. It's this massive, highly choreographed global dance.
Okay, here's our syllabus for today's explainer. We're going to cover the make or buy decision, mapping the global network, total cost of ownership, managing global risks, and finally, ethics and responsibility.
All right, moving right into part one, the make or buy decision.
In academic theory, the make or buy decision is exactly what it sounds like. It's the strategic choice a company makes between keeping complete internal control of their production or tapping into external specialist suppliers. When you choose to buy or outsource, you can drastically cut your operating costs. Plus, you get access to specialized skills and massive large-scale production capacity. But, there's a real trade-off. Outsourcing naturally means giving up some of your direct, everyday control over things like quality, distribution, and delivery performance.
And this is where Apple's approach is just brilliant. While old-school textbook theory might push for complete internal control to guarantee quality, Apple totally flips the script. They keep the absolute most crucial stuff, the design, the software, the pure innovation, strictly in-house. But if you look at their 2024 financials, pretty much all of their actual manufacturing is handled by outsourcing partners. We're talking partners based mainly in mainland China, India, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam. They even outsource a ton of their transportation and logistics. Basically, Apple keeps the brains of the operation, but they rent the brawn.
Let's transition over to Module 2, Mapping the Global Network.
To really get this, we have to talk about offshore sourcing. That's the practice of manufacturing components and assembling products across various international locations to capture very specific regional advantages. Apple isn't just pinning a map to the wall and throwing darts blindfolded. Nope. Every single geographical node in their entire supply chain serves a highly specific strategic purpose, based on local expertise and infrastructure.
It's actually amazing to see how textbook country selection plays out in Apple's real-world operations. Just look at the extreme specialization. For product assembly, like putting together the iPhone or the Apple Watch, they rely heavily on India and Vietnam. But semiconductor manufacturing, that highly complex work, is happening in the United States and France. Then you've got component manufacturing taking place in mainland China and Vietnam, while major logistics operations are being orchestrated out of the Czech Republic. It is a perfectly tuned, globally distributed machine.
Now, definitely take notes here, because we are busting a major myth today. A lot of people think successful global country selection is just about hunting down the absolute lowest labor cost. Not true. As Apple proves, it heavily depends on a very precise blend of factors. You need advanced technological capability, deep supplier expertise, massive production capacity, rock-solid infrastructure, market access, and bulletproof delivery reliability. Look, if a country offers dirt-cheap labor but has terrible roads and an unreliable power grid, they absolutely are not getting the contract.
Which brings us right to Section 3, Total Cost of Ownership.
Total cost of ownership is a huge concept. It's a comprehensive financial estimate that goes way, way beyond just the basic unit price of a component. It forces decision-makers to factor in all the hidden costs: transport, customs, warehousing inventory, managing quality control, and critically, the potential cost of disruptions. I always tell my classes, a microchip that costs 2 cents less per unit suddenly becomes incredibly expensive if it gets stalled in customs for a month and delays a massive global product launch.
So, successful global sourcing is really this giant, high-stakes balancing act. Apple has to juggle all these competing factors every single day. They're balancing pure cost against the absolute necessity for high quality and capacity. They have to weigh innovation and supply continuity against real-world political risks. It's never just about what a part costs to make. It is about what it costs to ensure that part consistently makes it into a customer's hands on time without fail.
All right, moving to part 4, Managing Global Risks. Let's talk about the sheer volume of threats a company like Apple actually faces. Historically, a lot of their manufacturing was concentrated among a pretty small number of outsourcing partners, sometimes even tied to single geographic locations. And honestly, that supplier concentration is a massive vulnerability. Throw in international trade restrictions, shifting geopolitical tensions, completely unpredictable natural disasters, public health events, and logistics bottlenecks. It's a lot. And you have to remember, you can't just flip a switch and move a mega factory overnight. Changing suppliers takes huge investments and deep technical preparation.
So how do they build resilience against all that? Well, we're seeing a really fascinating strategic evolution. First, there's supplier diversification, basically spreading production out beyond the traditional hubs. Second, we're seeing a lot of friendshoring, which means increasing manufacturing in allied or stable regions like India and Vietnam. And third, partial reshoring. For example, bringing programs back to the US to support the manufacturing of critical components locally. They aren't totally abandoning Asian manufacturing by any means. They're just building a much more dynamic, resilient mix.
And that leads us perfectly into our final module, number 5, ethics and supplier responsibility.
Think about this. How exactly does a massive company protect its brand reputation when its flagship products are being built by people it doesn't directly employ? Well, that is where ethical sourcing steps in. It's the proactive, rigorous management of supplier audits, strict labor standards, responsible material sourcing, and environmental requirements. Every single one of Apple's partners is required to strictly follow a comprehensive supplier code of conduct. It's absolutely crucial for mitigating labor, safety, and reputational risks when your suppliers are scattered all over the globe.
To give you a sense of the sheer scale of this enforcement, think about this number. In 2025 alone, Apple reported conducting 895 separate supplier facility assessments. And here's the kicker. Over 20% of those were completely unannounced visits. They just showed up. They are constantly monitoring these sites to make absolutely sure their standards are being met, right there on the factory floor, not just signed off on some piece of paper.
On top of that, an unbelievable 2.4 million supplier employees received workplace rights training in that same year. 2.4 million. That alone proves that effective relationship management and genuine ethical sourcing demands a massive continuous investment of time and resources.
Okay, to wrap up our lecture today, I really want you to remember that orchestrating this whole worldwide ecosystem, from the very first make or buy decision all the way down to those unannounced ethical audits, relies entirely on advanced digital sourcing. Complex global planning systems, deeply integrated supplier databases, and heavy-duty supply chain analytics. Those are the invisible threads tying this entire global network together.
All right, class dismissed. But before you go, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought for your take-home assignment. As global supply chains continue to dramatically shift, prioritizing resilience, friendshoring, and ethical practices over pure bottom-of-the-barrel costs, what is that made-in label actually going to mean for your next device? Is it really going to represent one single country, or is it becoming a symbol of a globally orchestrated network? Think about how this rapidly shifting landscape is going to redefine the future of commerce. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.